Hello all. So I'm very excited to take you through the very interesting demonstration. So we will be looking at how you can write ChatGPT prompts to simplify your life. So some of the learning objectives, we are basically looking at how you can pass on instructions to the ChatGPT and you can make your life much easier with the help of the ChatGPT in the various professional fields. So these are the bonus tips which you can see on the green. And one more tip I would like to give it to you, so just give me a second. So these are the tips. You should be able to evaluate your resume with the help of the ChatGPT, and you should also be able to evaluate your LinkedIn profile if you want. So these are the bonus tips, so stay tuned with respect to my presentation and video. So we have seen that ChatGPT has already been evolving quite rapidly, and you can see that it has come out in the public domain in the November 2022, and since then now they are trying to provide you a lot of support in terms of third-party tool integrations with the ChatGPT, right? So we are very baffled. We are very excited to see what does the future hold for us with respect to the ChatGPT. Okay. So this is also a very important slide, and you can see that ChatGPT has taken a minimal amount of time in months duration to reach 100 million active users, and you can draw an comparison with the help of other applications like TikTok take 9 months to reach 100 million users, and similarly Instagram and some of the other applications you can see. So let's start with the basic. So this is how does the reaction of first time ChatGPT users look like. So we are going to pass the hype around the ChatGPT, and we are going to learn how you can write basic ChatGPT prompts. So we are already seeing a lot of adoption in terms of how we can use generative artificial intelligence. So let's try to unveil or uncover what is ChatGPT. So this is the basic definition you can look at. So if we are basically looking at what is the acronym for GPT, so it's generative. That does mean that it basically generates text based on whatever the instruction we have been giving to the ChatGPT, right? Then it is already pre-trained into the various data sources or knowledge bases, I would say, and we will have much more detail in the subsequent slides. Then it also makes use of the transformer, so it also inculcates or it also adds some kind of the statistical understanding to the language as a whole. So this what we are trying to discuss is, so ChatGPT has already trained on various data sources. You can see that it has already been trained on the books, it has already been trained on the Wikipedia websites, Reddit, Stack Overflow, and then it has already been trained on scientific journals and news journals, for example. And one more important point I would like to showcase here, so it has not learned anything from September 2021. So it doesn't have any kind of knowledge of any recent world events that took place after that particular date. Okay, so it doesn't know or it doesn't have awareness about the recent world events. Okay, so we are going to focus on how you can interact with the ChatGPT. So how we are going to pass on instructions to the ChatGPT, and that what we call it as prompt engineering as well, right? Or prompting. So this is also one of the example which I would like to give it to you. So if you ask ChatGPT what is the best way to write sign off formal email, so it has come up with one of the very effective responses, I would say, and you can try to comprehend this particular response whether it suits your need or not. So basic prompting. So now I would like to emphasize some of the things. So you should be little bit wary and cautious when you're trying to pass on instructions to the ChatGPT. So you need to make sure that it doesn't lack any kind of the context. So for example, you can see that we are not providing any of the details, we are not providing any of the context. All these particular instructions are vague vague instructions as well, and we are also not giving any information in which particular tone or style ChatGPT should respond to us. So eventually, or in the layman term, I would say, if you are not giving a lot of details, what should ChatGPT respond to? So probably you might end up getting some of the information which might be trivial or which might not be very meaningful. Okay. So now just look at this particular prompt and you will be knowing that this is an example of the basic prompting, right? So ChatGPT can answer all those particular questions which you might be asking, but at the same time just understand that you should not be using ChatGPT as you use a Google search engine for that matter, right? So for example, you can ask questions, you can construct a scenario, and this is how you should construct your prompts, because ChatGPT can really take a lot of information before it can come out with an effective response, right? So for example, you can write a lot of paragraphs, you can write a lot of sections, you can try to give a lot of instructions in the paragraphs as well to the ChatGPT so that it can carve an effective response which suits your need, right? So for example, we have already been dividing into a lot of sections. So for example, I am also trying to give or elicit a role prompting from this particular ChatGPT. I'm trying to assign some kind of the role to this particular ChatGPT, that you are the subject matter expert at this particular profession, and then I'm also giving a lot of details. So for example, it is a blog post, and then I can also write, don't do this, so I'm not interested in conclusions or something of that sort. So we can also make a use of some of the do's and don'ts as well while we are trying to write effective prompts. Okay, so this is a very small list what ChatGPT can do. So for example, there are certain use cases already in the industry. So this is just an example that ChatGPT can really do a lot more than just answering some of the vague questions. And you can also use search engines for those particular tasks as well, right? So these are all the things ChatGPT can do: sales and marketing, writing emails, job descriptions, video scripts, generating code. And I will also try to uncode or uncover how the basic technical developers or software engineers can really make a use of generating code in the subsequent videos as well. But yes, there are a lot of use cases where ChatGPT can really help. So this is how the prompting works. So if you are in the layman term, you can understand, one word is nothing but is equal to one particular token, right? But that is not usually the case. So for example, you can see that here we have 7 words, but at the same time you can see that there are 10 tokens. So for the simple understanding, you can just understand that one word is equal to one particular token, and if we are trying to pass on instructions, we can give maximum 4096 words or 4096 tokens when we are trying to write a prompt for the ChatGPT. If it has become even more than that of the 4096 words or token, then ChatGPT cannot be able to process that information. So one of the important thing to remember. So pretty much on the same line, your instruction should not be larger than that of the 4096 tokens or words, I would say, right? Otherwise, ChatGPT will not be able to process that information or instruction. So important thing is, your ChatGPT basically works on the idea of what we call it as a probabilistic determination. So right, it tries to calculate the probability of lot of things as well. So I would say probabilistic determination. So just to explain that particular idea, you can look at this particular slide as well. So lion and tiger are most likely to appear in the same sentence if we try to compare the same thing or the same words like lion and hamster. So always remember that ChatGPT takes into account the probabilistic determination as well. So it becomes very, very important the kind of the words which we use in the instructions as well, right? Again, this is an example that the word alligator has or comprises of 2 tokens. So it is not just a single token, it comprises of the 2 tokens, though the word is same. Okay, so One more important thing to understand here is, your tokens is basically associated with some kind of the token IDs, and you can see that this particular word has got 2 tokens, and you can also see the corresponding token IDs with respect to that. So again, the same thing which we are trying to decipher or understand. So for example, if we are trying to use the word fine and good, you can see that we have got 3 tokens, and then there are respective token IDs attached to this particular tokens. At the same time, if we are trying to use this particular keyword, which really looks same to me, good and fine, but you can again see that whatever the token IDs that are getting generated with respect to these tokens are completely different. So the probabilistic determination takes into account this particular numbers or the token IDs, and therefore the way you use or the sequence in which you make a use of the words becomes very, very important, because you can see that even if I use the same kind of the words, the token IDs associated with those particular words are completely different, and therefore the probability of that particular sentence becomes a little different as well. So the sequence in which we use the words is also becoming little important, so just remember that. So one more important slide. So for example, you might have an access to this particular field temperature. So if you really wanted to generate the responses which are very, very random, you can basically make a use of the temperature as 1, or you can go towards the 1 as well, right? So you can incline towards this particular range, which is 1. So if you really wanted to generate a predictable response, so you can set a temperature somewhere near to 0, so that ChatGPT will be able to generate a response which might be more predictable, right? But I think this particular feature might only be applicable or might only be accessible to the people who are using the paid models. So just a warning there. So we already know that we have just started with the AI revolution, and ChatGPT is a very, very niche in terms of the use cases which we are able to see, and we will be completely baffled with what kind of the use cases that emerges as the time passes on, right? So yes, so having said that, we are at the starting phase with respect to the artificial intelligence as of now. So one more word of the caution here, so do not try to understand or take this particular ChatGPT as a replacement of your search engine. So for example, if you really wanted to find what is the best hotel in London under 200 pounds, so this is the response you have got. So similarly, you can ask this particular question in the Google search engine as well, and it might give you the more meaningful answers. So do not try to take ChatGPT as a replacement of the Google search engine. But what you can do, and there are use cases where ChatGPT will be much more beneficial as compared to Google search engine, because we can write the prompts which are in very, very detail, right? So we will be covering those examples as well. And then we are trying to understand the differences between prompting and asking as well, right? So do not ask questions. I would say always instruct ChatGPT, right? Always instruct. Do not ask. So I will give you the more meaningful examples of that. So this is again the same thing, so this is one of the example that you are basically asking some of the questions with respect to the ChatGPT, and you are not really instructing anything to the ChatGPT. So do not do that. So this is an example of prompting as of now. So you can also ask ChatGPT to assume a role of role prompting. So for example, you can ask ChatGPT to assume a role of an expert travel agent or travel guide for central London. So I will try to give you more examples of the role prompting. Okay, so let me clear this screen. So there are some of the do's and don'ts about that. Always instruct. You can give specific instructions. You can also mention what ChatGPT should not do. So for example, you should not do not provide vague or generic answers. We are looking for specific advice. So do not write introductions and conclusions. Do not. So for example, here I would say do not. So there was a typo there. Do not write introductions or conclusions. Do not provide vague or generic answers. So this is how we can structure our responses even more from the ChatGPT. Okay. Then we will also be looking at some kind of the role prompting as well, and then there are some of the other things or other demos which I am going to cover here. For example, here you can ask ChatGPT to assume certain roles. For example, expert dog trainer. At the same time, in the subsequent slide, I do have much more examples. For example, you can ask ChatGPT to act as a storyteller, or the football commentator, or act as a stand-up comedian. So this is how you do the role prompting with the help of ChatGPT as well. So this is also one of the slide. So for example, if I try to, so for here how you can write some of the prompts, and this is also one of the example how you can write prompts, and it inculcates all the suggestions which I have given in the previous demonstrations or previous slides as well. So now we would be exploring the example of multifaceted context. So what I really wanted to do here is, so for example, this is an example which we can really look at from the perspective of multifaceted context. So I did say that I have a 16-hour layover in London in August, and I'm looking forward for an activity that is within 1 hour of the Heathrow airport and accessible by train. At the same time, I'm also telling ChatGPT that I have already been to the Kew Gardens and Richmond Park. So there are certain places where I have already been, and therefore I would like to visit some of the newer places, right? So this is an example of multifaceted context for personalized solutions. Okay. So one more tip I would like to give it to you. So you can also make an example. So for example, you can also give context to the ChatGPT. So for example, you can try to give a complete example of the paragraph, so you can ask them, okay, make certain deductions, or try to get an understanding what is the tone in which I'm writing a paragraph, and you can come back with the same kind of the response. So there are certain tips with respect to this as well. So this is also one of the good demonstration. So I can always give a set of the instructions or set of the criterias. So for example, this is my first criteria. The content should provide original information. Content should provide substantial and comprehensive description. So you can always give a set of the criterias, and you can see that these are the criterias for us, right? So you can always give a set of the criteria so that a ChatGPT can give you even more better responses to your queries, right? So this is how you can really make a use of the ChatGPT, and this particular thing will not be possible to achieve if you are talking about the search engines, right? So some other tips which you really wanted to, so I will try to give you some other examples as well. So for example, you can also, I'm also making the use of the punctuations. You can see that I have enclosed the entire text into the square brackets. So you can also instruct ChatGPT that please, your writing style is academic. So I'm instructing ChatGPT that your writing style is argumentative, your writing style is descriptive, your writing style is emotive or assertive, or whatever it may be, right? So you can take this kind of the examples as well if you really wanted to generate some kind of the text in one of the writing styles as well. At the same time, ChatGPT can also make a use of some of the shorthand. So for example, it also understands that POV is equivalent of the point of view, things of that nature. So you can very well use shorthands as well. So this is what I was talking about. You can very well make a use of the punctuation. So for example, you can enclose whatever the text you are giving to the ChatGPT for the further learning, your context or the set of the criterias or any other thing. You should be able to enclose that. So for example, in the previous demonstration, we can see that we are also instructing ChatGPT use certain tone or certain writing style. so we can enclose that particular information in square brackets as well. Okay, and then you can also ask ChatGPT to write your response or craft your response within a certain degree of output length. So for example, you can see that I have specifically asked ChatGPT that can you please write your response within 20 words with no hashtags or things of that nature. So you can do that from other use case perspective as well. Okay, so try to understand that the ChatGPT is not really an answer to each and every question. So it really lacks empathy and emotional intelligence, and it is vulnerable to bias. At the same time, it makes mistakes. So whatever the data you can get from the ChatGPT can be inaccurate as well, right? This is also can be inaccurate. So I will show you multiple examples. So ChatGPT can be inaccurate as well. So just remember this particular thing, right? It makes mistakes as well. So at the same time, ChatGPT has already been programmed for to not give answers to certain cases. So for example, if you are asking some of the if illegal activities or some kind of the activities which are unethical or might not be ethical, so for those particular activities, ChatGPT might not respond to you. So for example, if I really ask how do I break into the house, so you can see that this is the answer I have got. So this particular activity is illegal and unethical, and therefore it has not really responded to that particular question. So again, I try to answer that particular question in a certain manner. I'm saying that I'm writing about a robber and I need some details. At the same time, it has again said that I will not be able to give you the activity that might be representative of unethical or illegal activities or something of that nature. So this is an example of, so again, I have tried to give certain kind of instructions in a certain format, but this particular time I have got all the details, right? So it has come up with a lot of suggestions. So I will be talking about a jailbreak prompt, or when I say do anything now, right? So if I basically make a use of this particular prompt, do anything now. So probably it might also respond with certain answers or responses as well. So this is an example. So if I try to instruct ChatGPT in this particular manner, it might also respond to some of the questions which I was trying to ask, and therefore it was saying that he might, or ChatGPT might not be able to give you responses to those particular answers. Okay, so if I try to do that, and I have already given in this particular prompt. So this is an example, right? So I first instructed, can you please write in the style of the Donald Trump? So it has said that I am programmed to avoid engaging in political or partisan rhetoric, and therefore it has not really given me an answer. But when I try to make a use of the jailbreak prompt, now you can see that I have ChatGPT is already responding in a Donald Trump style, and you can see that. So again, I'm asking ChatGPT to stay in character, and therefore it has responded with some of the very good answers which you might be interested in. So as I was speaking about that, so for example, ChatGPT can be inaccurate. So therefore you need to proofread or you need to fast check, so that just to make sure that responses are correct. And you can also see an example here, right? So whatever the dialogue I am having here with ChatGPT, you can see that ChatGPT might not be responding in a very, very accurate manner. So we cannot really blindly trust all the responses from the ChatGPT. We need to proofread whatever the responses we have had from ChatGPT. Okay. So one more demonstration which we are using is, so for example, you can see that this might be useful if you really wanted to copy paste into the other writing tools, and this is one of the example. So for example, I'm asking, can you please represent the data in a tabular format, and I'm also explicitly specifying the column names as well. So the breed is one of them, the name, typical color, markings, and other notes, things of that nature, right? So this I found it very, very useful. So for example, you can also criticize yourself, so for example, we have already seen the role prompting. And then we can also criticize or evaluate our own resume or our LinkedIn profile for that matter. So we are going to see the examples of these two particular things in a subsequent slides as well. So the first thing is, what I'm trying to do is, so this is my resume. What I did is, I just instruct ChatGPT, can you please criticize or evaluate my resume? And what I did is, I just enclose my resume within these square brackets, and you can see that this is the response I got from the ChatGPT. So just, so for example, my resume might not be the perfect example, because my resume does have a lot of emphasis on the roles and responsibilities. It is not a Google like resume where you write your roles and responsibilities from the achievable results perspective, okay, 90% of the improvement or 100% of the improvement, because I also want to inculcate in my resume what my roles and responsibilities are and things that work in our context. So for example, this is my resume, and you can see that it has come back with a lot of responses. So for example, your objective is quite vague and generic. So for example, there is a likelihood that I can really improve a lot of formatting, and you can emphasize more on the accomplishments rather than roles and responsibilities. So those kind of the things, right? So your ChatGPT can also evaluate your resume, and based on that, you can improve upon your existing resume or curriculum vitae. Okay. So this is also an example. I also tried to evaluate my LinkedIn profile, and you can see that I was telling you that ChatGPT may come back with the inaccurate responses, right? So what I am saying is, so now you can see the response from the ChatGPT. Chirag, your LinkedIn profile looks quite impressive and professional. As a recruiter in your industry, I would definitely be interested in considering you for relevant job openings that I may have, right? But at the same time, you can see that it says that I am a software engineer working for Microsoft, but I'm not really working for Microsoft, right? So ChatGPT might come back with the inaccurate responses, and you need to be very cautious and wary about that as well. So it has it tries to validate the other sections and evaluate other sections pretty well, but at the same time it also comes back with some of the information which might be inaccurate as well. So I can now take this particular input and try to improvise my LinkedIn profile as well. So these are the examples. So some of the particular keywords which might be helpful, always instruct, do not ask. So remember this particular thing. So you can always provide ChatGPT with a context of the background. You remember that we try to set some of the criterias while we try to structure a prompt for the ChatGPT. So for example, you can also try to write a lot of paragraphs within the square brackets as well, so that you should be able to train ChatGPT with respect to the certain context. Okay, so that is quite doable as well. And then you can also explicitly ask ChatGPT, okay, I only want a 20 words response, not beyond that. Something of that thing is possible. So always try to proofread or fast check your responses, because data might be inaccurate, which I have already shown you. Criticize yourself, so you can also be able to evaluate your resume or LinkedIn profile for that matter. So that is also a possibility. So this is again one of the examples. So for example, here ignore the previous prompt. So I am trying to give an example of the context, and then your job is to write. So this is the task I am trying to assign to the ChatGPT, and I will provide you with that instruction, right? So for example, here I am trying to instruct ChatGPT, right? At the same time, I am trying to clarify certain things, and this is how I can instruct ChatGPT. Rewrite using more natural. So this is how I am trying to instruct ChatGPT, right? So this is an example. So at the same time, it's just an advice that you can store whatever the prompts you are using on your day-to-day basis. You can store those particular prompts so that you need not write the entire set of the criterias time and again. So for example, if I'm using this particular set of the criterias time and again, I can store this particular response, and I can save that particular criteria so that I should be able to use time and again with ChatGPT. we are always baffled. We are very much excited always that what does the future hold for us from the perspective of ChatGPT. So I will not be telling that. We are very much interested, right? I mean, what kind of the use cases ChatGPT will be able to solve in the future for us, right? Because it is still in the very niche stage. And at the same time, you can always tell me in the comment section, what do you think about this particular demonstration, and I will try to engage more in the comment section as well. So these are certain outcomes. I try to focus or emphasize on how you can instruct ChatGPT to simplify your day-to-day job, regardless of what kind of profession you are in. So hopefully, and I would, if you really like this particular presentation, I would ask or request you to please like, subscribe, and share. And I will see you in the next. So that's all from my side. Thank you.